And we're back. Hall here with another Hall of Code lesson. Let's dive right in. We're going to be looking at CSS Grid. The CSS Grid layout is a powerful tool that CSS gives us to easily align items and create two-dimensional layouts. The CSS Grid offers a grid-based layout system with rows and columns. CSS Grid allows developers to easily create complex web layouts, makes it easier to design a responsive layout structure without using float or position. Let's take a look. All right, we're going to get started in HTML. And for this, I'm going to start with a container called grid container. And inside of that, I'm going to make a 9 items. And so I'm going to say 9. All right. And then we'll put in here item and a $sign. That gives me 9 items. Okay. So I have 9 div classes with 9 items. And this is what it looks like over here. Let's go to our CSS. And this is our starter code. You can go ahead and type that if you like to get started. And we're going to start with grid container. And we're going to put max width. This is something we haven't talked about yet, but this basically gives you the maximum viewpoint size for your website. And then we're going to go margin 100 pixels, padding 100 pixels, add my semicolon, add the semicolon, and we're going to say display grid. Okay. And then we're going to go grid template columns. We're going to say 100 pixels by 200 pixels. All right. Now you see that we have 2 columns. And so this has been set up with using display grid. Okay. Let's add some more. We're going to style the items, and we'll go background color, style the color 98A8F8. Okay, and we're going to go color. It's going to be white. Font size 20 pixels. We'll say padding 20 pixels. And we'll go border 1 pixel solid. We'll put a color in here. Now that you have 2 columns, the first one is 100 pixels, the second is 200 pixels. If we wanted to add a third column of, let's say, 300 pixels, we can do this by doing the following. Okay, so we have grid template columns 100, 200. Let's add a third, take out the semicolon. Now we have 3 columns, and you can see here, this is at 100, this is at 200, and this is at 300. You can do percentages also. So let's say I go 30%, 40%, and 30%. And you still have your grid, your 3 grids now. We could also do what we call fractional units. And so if we wanted to do that, we can say 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR, and they're all evenly 3 fractional units. Okay, if you wanted one bigger than the other, you can change that 1 and make it a 2. And now this third column is bigger than the other 2. Okay. And then you can also do what we call repeat. Okay, so we'll say repeat, and we'll go 3. So that means 3 columns, 1 fractional unit apiece. And now they're all the same size, repeated 3 times. Now let's add column gap. And we're gonna say 10 pixels. And now we have some gap in between each column. Okay. We can also say row gap. We'll go 10 pixels. And we now have 10 pixels in the row. Now, if you want the same gap for row and column, you can just simply type gap and all right, let's go back to our HTML. And we're gonna add some dummy text under item 1. So right here, we're gonna add Lorem 40. We're gonna get 40 words of dummy text. Notice that the height expands to fit the content by default, and all the columns in the row also expands. So as you can see here, you can see that. Let's go back to CSS, and after gap, we're gonna put grid auto rows. We're gonna say 200 pixels. Notice the height is now set to 200 pixels, regardless of the content. It could even cut off some of the content. So some of the content, as you can see, is now cut off. We're gonna take gap out, and we're gonna add grid template rows. Okay, we're gonna say repeat 3 1 FR. Now look at this. Now the height is going to be whichever has the most content. In this case, box 1 has the most content. Let's go back to HTML. We're going to delete half the content. The row now is smaller. Delete a little bit more. And all the rows are now smaller. Let's go back and put that content back in. Gap. We'll say 10 pixels. All right. We got grid template column, repeat 3 and 1, and our gap. So now you can see the other columns are resized differently now. Now we're going to add align items. And we're going to say start. What this does is align everything to the top, so we can align to the center as well. So you see everything is aligned to the top. So we have align item start. We can change it to end. And now the items are aligned to the end. And we can also say center. And now the items are aligned to the center. And now we're going to go back to grid template columns, 100 pixels. And we'll align this to the end. you should now have 3 100 pixel columns. If we wanted to align all the columns, we could just justify the content. So we'll go here and we'll type justify content end. What this does is move everything to the end. We can also align to the center. So we can go justify content center. And that aligns everything to the center. You can also say justify content start, and that puts it to at the beginning. Let's go ahead and change it back to 1FR. So we got grid template columns, repeat, 1FR. And we're going to take align items and justify content, and we're going to put them in a comment. Now, what if we wanted to align a specific item among the 9 items we currently have? We can do that by adding inf of type. So we'll say item inf of type, and we want to change the height to 100 pixels, and this is going to be inf of type number 2. So 100 pixels, width 100 pixels, line self, we'll say center, and then we'll go justify self, also center. Now, you should see how these properties are available. We're going to change inf of type to 1, and we're going to say background black. All right, we'll go grid column start, grid column start, we'll say 1, and then we'll go grid column end, we'll say 3. Okay, so we changed the color to black, and we had the column stretch over from line 1 to line 3. Another way to do this is to comment out the grid column start and end, and instead have grid column 1 by 3. Okay, so instead of saying grid column start, grid column end, we can also say grid column one by 3, and we can comment out these, get the same thing. Or we can say grid column 1, and we can say span 2, and that gives you the same thing. So instead of us specifically saying we wanted to go from 1 to 3, we told it to start at 1 and span 2. But the preferred way is what we just did, 1 by 3. So let's go back to what most developers do, 1 by 3. So we have inf of type 1. We're going to add another inf of type. another nth of type, and we're going to say 3. And this time we're going to give it a background color. Okay, so that's item 3. We're going to say grid row 2 by 4. So now we see that it spans from 2 to 4. Let's do the same thing with 4. We'll just copy that, change this to 4. Okay, item 4. And now we have the same thing as what we have in 3. All right, so these are just some of the things you can do with grid. We're gonna do a template for grid so to give you guys an opportunity to kind of see how it works. But this is what I want to show you so far.